Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, legends of the internet, welcome to History in the Making. This is the launch. This is the ignition, the official beginning of the N5, episode number 1. Before we blow this thing wide open, let's introduce ourselves. I'm El Smuggo.
I'm Jim.
And this is the brand new N5 show. You're here at the start of something big. All right, Jim, first question of the show goes to you, mate. How are you feeling about the big launch today?
Yeah, no, buzzing, mate. Obviously, it's been a long time in the making. We've gone home, we've gone away together. In the midst of it all, I probably want to just give a shout out first and foremost to Alan for just the incredible creation of bringing, like, we had this like bonkers idea about doing something with North London Forever and then recreating it like that. It's so yeah, mate. No, just absolutely buzzing to get going, even though, as Arsenal fans, we've not had a great last hour, have we, with the news coming out about injuries?
No, we certainly haven't. And I know we're going to have a big old dialogue about that a little bit later. But myself and you obviously messaged quite a bit over the week. And you get all excited, don't you, for the Tottenham game? You get excited that actually some players might come back. And, yeah, the international break's kind of crippled us, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's always this situation, isn't it? This ongoing thing at the moment around football, you know, the price of entertainment with workload and, you know, the more and more games. And, you know, we're not too dissimilar age, and sort of thinking back to how many games a player probably used to have to play back in the day, 45, 50. Now, someone who's like a full international and an elite regular at a club like Arsenal's probably asked to play 65, 70 games a year. After the Qatar World Cup, you know, the added incentive of adding time back for ball out of the game, it's an extra 15 minutes a game. It doesn't sound a lot, but over a 50-game season, you know, it's another 1,000 minutes in the legs. And the most annoying thing, obviously, is just the sheer number of what I would call like out of contact injuries. You know, obviously back in the day when we had earth-shattering injuries like Eduardo, Aaron Ramsey, things like that, things that just can't, you know, they're freak accidents. And but, you know, the amount of muscular injuries, hamstrings, groins, and pull-ups now that we're witnessing is, you know, is concerning. And it's difficult to try and put your finger on it, Smuggs, you know, as to, like, is it an Arteta thing? Is it a training program thing? Is it, you know, is it sheer workload? I mean, you know, historically, we've had a very thin squad, haven't we? And now we've got a big squad. We're going to really test it and see whether or not we've got the metal.
Yeah, it is going to test the squad over the next, definitely the next month or so. Like when you start looking at that, obviously the Premier League games, we've got the Champions League games actually this week. When you start looking at the fixtures we've got, you've got a big North London derby, which is obviously in everyone's calendar at the start of the season before the fixtures have come out. When's that going to be? Then you look at Bayern Munich, who arguably are alongside us, probably one of the best 2 or 3 teams in Europe at this present time. And then you look at Chelsea away, that has obviously been a big rival to us for many years. And you look at them 3 big games and you think, actually, if we get out of these 3 games in a really good way, then you look at it like, actually, are we gonna kick on from this? But then it's the other side of it, isn't it, as well, that start losing big players like Gabriel. If a result doesn't go our way, how does that then kind of affect confidence?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we've been in a really good moment, you know, 9 wins in our last 10, unbeaten in those 10 games as well. So, you know, it's very easy for fans to be very, very kind of last game biased and you know, look at the Sunderland result and the fact that we kind of had victory snatched from us in the dying embers of the game, you know, and all of a sudden kind of, you know, the wheels coming off, which is exactly how the media want to present it. But, you know, we were always going to have, we weren't going to win every game till the end of the season. I think you know that, I know that. But, yeah. You know, what I think is important now is how we regroup and we tackle these next fixtures. And, you know, not forgetting as well that we've had very tough matches already that we've overcome with injuries in them, whether it be Newcastle away, whether it be City. You know, obviously the Liverpool game was separated by a wonder goal. So, yeah, mate, if I'm being honest with you, Sunday's more important. The following Sunday at Chelsea is more important. I think we've done so well in the Champions League to go 4 wins from 4, not conceded, that even if he goes and rests a couple of players and he tries to get, a little bit overzealous in protecting the squad now, I don't think we need to win the Bayern game. I don't actually think the result's that much of a problem with looking at some of the other fixtures. They always say that about 17 points you're banked to get automatic qualification. So we're 12 from 12. Who have we got left? Club Brugge. I know we've got Inter Milan, and I think we've got another game that looks very winnable. So I think he could afford to do a little bit of rotation midweek as well if he's really concerned.
Yeah, and look, one of the biggest things that obviously I will raise is that we had a big summer in the transfer window, didn't we? So when you start looking at the squad now, it's a total different picture to what that squad looked like last season before that. You start looking at even when, I know we lost Gabriel and it could be a big loss, and there's talks that it could be a month, 2 months at present, but we're bringing in an international experience in Hincapié. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, this guy won the Bundesliga with Leverkusen. Got big talk around his name.
I think they went invincible the season they won it.
And that tells you the competition that's within that squad now, isn't it? So even though it is disastrous news that we lose Gabriel for a substantial amount of time, especially when it's a friendly, that is going to be the kick in the stomach that you don't want. But this is a great opportunity for someone like Hincapié, isn't it? And in my opinion, what I've seen of him so far, I think he's going to be a big, big player for us.
Yeah, and look, and there's a couple of things to kind of highlight there, right? With the money that Arteta's spent, this is where it's going to really come under its scrutiny, and probably rightly so. But this isn't 2023 where we lost Saliba in the penultimate moment of the season, and Rob Holding came in with the utmost respect. This is Hincapié, a full international who's a league title winner. Calafiori, who's had a phenomenal season, who is naturally a centre-half, left centre-half, and plays there for Italy, which means then that either Hincapié or Lewis Skelly can play left-back, who until he hasn't been able to get into the Arsenal team was the starting left-back for England. And also not forgetting that Mosquera's had a phenomenal start to his Arsenal career, probably over-exceeded everyone's expectation, because realistically, who really watched Valencia last year and thought, who's this lad we've picked up at 12.5 million quid, and he's been brilliant. Every time he's had to come in and deputise, probably more biased on the right-hand side, he's been great. So actually, mate, in this Gabriel thing, the only two things that I'm maybe slightly concerned about is, one, I think he brings out the best in Saliba, Gabriel, and Saliba plays better next to him. And two, is the attacking threat from set pieces. Obviously with Gabriel, he occupies so much of the opposition's attention that other people can pop up in the box and crash and do damage. And if we've lost that, will we lose a little? I mean, we won't obviously lose the delivery because Saka and Rice are available, but will we lose? Nicola Jova is going to have to work really quickly into finding who's going to deputise for Gabriel in attacking and defensive set pieces, so that we're as effective, in this period that we're without him.
Yeah, and that's an area that we are going to have to look at, isn't it? That is an area that actually you'd like to think that we are working on solutions with that, like even prior to these kind of injuries. We have to think ahead of the game, don't we? As such, there's not always going to be a Gabriel there. There's not always going to be a Saliba there. I look at this squad now, and I think actually, from a defensive unit, we're pretty much, for a man, the best in Europe, if not the best in the world. I look at us in midfield, and I think, do you know what? If we lost a caliber of player like Declan Rice, then for me, that's a big piece, isn't it? That's the one player for me at the moment I look at and I think, actually, do we have a replacement for him?
Yeah, I would completely agree with you. I think he's a leader on the pitch. I think he is in a phenomenal moment in his Arsenal career. I think he's probably playing on cloud nine. The game is definitely flowing through him, and he somewhat controls it. He is integral to everything that Arsenal does well at the moment. And, Zubimendi is probably enabling Rice with how efficiently he does his role, and allowing Rice to be a true box-to-box player. But yeah, if you didn't have a Gyökeres, you'd argue that as long as everyone else is fit, would the standard really drop with a Havertz? Maybe not. If you could probably afford to lose one or two of the back four because we've got 8 phenomenal defenders. We should be able to retain standards there. If Saka goes, Madueke, until he got injured, deputised brilliantly in his role. We don't really know who our true left winger is because we've got options there in Martinelli, Trossard, and Eze. So I think you're spot on. The left 8 or Declan, just as a human being, is the one that we absolutely have to wrap in cotton wool if we want to go and finally break this duck of being a bridesmaid this year.
And you mentioned Martin Zubimendi. What's your thoughts in terms of his starting an Arsenal career?
Yeah, I mean, he's been phenomenal. I think I didn't know much about him, obviously until he broke onto the scene and had to deputise for Rodri, which is pretty big boots to fill in the Euro final, and he did it with aplomb. I didn't actually know from looking at all the highlight reels and watching him back. I'm always surprised, but not surprised. I don't know if you agree with the technical level of players that come out of Spain, because when they're a CDM or something like that, a traditional CDM he's probably applied his trade in the Premier League is more about how destructive he is in breaking play up and affecting, the game by not allowing the opposition to attack, and then actually seeing how comfortable he is on the ball in very tight situations. His passing range, his distribution is top. Obviously, he scored a wonder goal and almost scored another one, in the Sunderland game. So, yeah, he obviously can shoot from range as well. I think he works brilliantly in the double pivot with Rice, and I think, he's settled in really well there. He scored a phenomenal goal for Spain in the week, if you saw it, where he was almost playing on the shoulder as a false 9, So he just seems to pop up in these pockets and really affect the game. He reminds me a little bit, but maybe technically slightly better than Gilberto Silva. He's going to be an unsung hero, I think, because he's not going to be applauded for match-winning tackles or scoring all the goals. But I think he's going to be just an integral part of the team that is inevitably, hopefully, leads us to major honours.
I think that's a brilliant kind of link that you've kind of brought up there about Gilberto Silva, because when I think of Patrick Vieira, when Gilberto Silva come in, Patrick Vieira's game improved even more to the level in terms of goal scoring, didn't it? Like, he would get himself forward much more, and I think we're already seeing that with Declan Rice. In my opinion, I think actually Zubimendi, like you said, he doesn't get the plaudits as much as he should, because actually he's doing that unsung hero job. But to me, like, I don't think we've seen anyone better in that position, if I'm being totally honest. And I was a great fan of Thomas Partey. He could blow hot and cold, and I do feel that the other thing when I mentioned about Thomas Partey was last year, I didn't agree that he got dragged out to right back as much as he did, and I think that harboured a lot of our chances at times in terms of him having to go right back. But now you're seeing Declan Rice with a Zubimendi game in, game out. Do you know what I mean? And they're not moving a defensive-minded player in that central midfield position into a fullback position. I think we're reaping the rewards this year through that.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously now that Mikel has kind of recruited for the team that has made it absolutely, he's covered that position off like threefold, right? Because you've got a phenomenal player. I'm a massive Ben White fan. I think he's a brilliant footballer. I think he wears his heart on his sleeve. I think he does a lot of dirty work. He's a tremendous athlete. He wants it more than anyone. I think actually he might have slightly better chemistry with Saka maybe than Timber does, but I think his total game is just not quite at Timber's level. Timber's really, really... He's another one who I think will just go down as an unsung hero, a bit like a Loren, because we're going to inevitably compare this team to the Invincible team over time, and he just has everything in his game. But if it's not White, it's Mosquera who can play right back, right? So, and I think naturally, actually, Lewis Skelly is a right-footed player. I might be wrong, but I think he is right-footed. I think he's just very two-footed. So even he could potentially play there. And there's this phenomenal lad in the academy, Josh Nichols, coming through, who's definitely one to watch for the future as well. So, they're very well equipped at right back. But if you made a really good point about Thomas Partey. also a really big Thomas Partey fan. I love the lethargic style of a footballer. I've always resonated to players who play like that. Mesut Ozil was another one. You know, when he was playing at right back, it was because he was having to occupy that position, and he wanted to kind of wander into midfield and maybe leave the defence exposed. If you actually look at Zubimendi, he does the role in reverse. He plays in the CDM, but when we're in our defensive shape off the ball, he actually doubles down on the right back position and leaves Saka a little bit higher up the pitch to press higher, and he kind of pulls towards Timber, and they double up on that, you know, in that period to then open the play up on the left-hand side. And you quite often see Zubimendi defending in and around the right-back position and turning possession back over. And I think it's very natural for him to do it. I'm not saying for a moment that he's a right-back, but he obviously does, in his defensive duties, he's just so good at screening the back four. And Declan obviously does it on the left-hand side. And then it allows the fullbacks to obviously push up and express themselves attackingly, which Calafiori's done this year brilliantly, you know, and probably another one who, you know, is tough on Miles, right? And he's academy graduate, so we always resonate towards these kids a little bit, you know, that we want to see him come through. But it'd be very difficult, wouldn't it, to drop Calafiori in this moment with the season he's had as well?
Yeah, no, it'd be very, very tough. Like, for me, this year, it's about obviously getting over the line, and what a fantastic player Lewis Skelly is and what he's going to be. Do you know what I mean? I think Mikel needs that experience, game in, game out, to kind of see us over the line. I think Skelly is going to offer us quite a bit over the course of the season, and he will be given these opportunities, rightly so. Do you know what I mean? We've already seen it in the Champions League. I thought he had a really, really good performance, if I'm being honest with you, mate, against Atletico Madrid, where I thought he was absolutely superb. And let's be honest, the world's, in my opinion, he's oyster, Lewis Skelly. I just think that at the moment it's about Mikel getting over that line with the title, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it really is. You know, 3 years is the bridesmaid. But if I'm completely honest with you, the first season, I think we caught City and Liverpool off guard a little bit, you know, and led from the front for an extortionate amount of time, and you know, we ended up with 85 points and didn't win the league. You know, obviously had a pretty tough finish when Saliba was injured and our form dropped significantly. You know, then we got 89 points the next season, which would have won the league 75% of the existence of the Premier League. So it's just unfortunate, you know, 1 point off the invincible total. I think actually last year was a bit of a rebuild year for us. You know, I thought we were out of it very early on. The season got elongated just by how deep we went in the Champions League, but we went through a bit of a minor rebuild last year. And then it was capped off this season with the recruitment that was done this summer, which was exceptional. And obviously bringing in Andrea Berta, and he had a massive influence on building this squad we've got now. So, you know, I would say 2 title challenges out of 3. You know, we still managed to secure Champions League football in the last year, which was good. Just so happened that everyone else was kind of going for a bit of a rebuild, and everyone sort of gifted it a little bit to Liverpool to an extent. But yeah, we're in a prime position now to be equipped. You know, yes, it's something, you know, people will say these players haven't won anything, they don't know what it's like to win. I just think that's nonsense. You know, when you start playing football as a 6, 7, 8-year-old, you know, you start getting the hunger to win from academy years all the way up to then getting into senior football and then getting capped by your country. And it's always about small wins and getting experience. And the lion's share of that dressing room, you know, from the players that they've brought in, have won stuff. Zubimendi won the Euros, Gyökeres won Primera Liga and, you know, the Golden Boot. And then he was the Golden Boot winner in, you know, in the Ballon d'Or. And Eze won the FA Cup and the Community Shield. And so these guys have, you know, Rice won major honours with West Ham, you know, in Europe before coming over to Arsenal. And then the rest of the team have obviously been in around 3 title challenges, and they've fallen short. So they'll all know, won't they, Smuggs, what they need to do. And you've got to also say that, you know, Arteta is equipped as he'll ever be to get it done now. And when we might have to ask a question of him if he doesn't do it this year.
Yeah, some good points raised there. What I'm going to do, I'm going to hold that there for a little bit, because I think I want to kind of get into your understanding of how you've seen the season so far in terms of particular games. So look, we did have a tricky start, didn't we, Jim? There was no doubts about that. First game away to Manchester United. Look, it's not the Man United of old, but the rivalry sits there still. And actually, looking at Manchester United's form this year, it's much improved from last year. How big was it to get the 3 points under the belt in that game? Because we come under a lot of criticism, didn't we, after that game in terms of the performance?
Yeah, I mean, it's always difficult, isn't it? You've only played in pre-season friendlies. It's not the same intensity as the Premier League. Then you've got to go away to Old Trafford, which is never a nice place to go on the first day of the season. You're not in your flow. Your body's not quite right. Some of the players hadn't had proper pre-seasons. Some players weren't ready. So it's just not a nice place to go. So as you just quite rightly put, what we did find was we were able to play them at the right time, which is a bit of luck, but we'll take it. Keep a clean sheet, put them under enough pressure to be able to get the set pieces, and we got away with 3 points. And United have gone through a much better moment since, and Amarim's kind of more and more moulding into I think the way he wants United to play now. And I think Old Trafford's going to become more and more difficult to go. And we're fortunate that we've got it marked off with 3 points, and everyone else has still got to go there. So, yeah, that being said, you've got to learn to win ugly as well, mate. Football's evolving from when we kind of grew up with the amount of flair and the way the games were played. Now it's so much more tactile, and there's so much more athleticism involved in the game now that we did everything we needed to on the day. It wasn't pretty, but it was the maximum result we could get from it. So, it was a good away start.
It was a very good away start. And then obviously we followed that up with Leeds, which was a comprehensive win. Victor Gulchrist, I know from obviously having a lot of conversations that you're a big fan of his. Bags a couple in that game, but also that game I would always go back to actually the addition of Eze signing for the Arsenal. In terms of obviously, firstly, Gulchrist, in terms of that game, that was a good impact for him to have at the Emirates on his first home start, wasn't it, in the Premier League?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Taylor two halves, right? A very difficult day, first game in the Arsenal. Realistically, if Havertz was fit, would they have bedded him in a little bit differently and not needed him to start? Because he hadn't had a pre-season with the ongoing embargo with Sporting and the €5 million and getting the deal over the line. And he was sitting in Sweden twiddling his thumbs for a couple of extra weeks. And, we could even argue now, if we wanted to be melodramatic about it, is the reason now he's got a knock because he's had to play every minute of every game. We've seen enough of him now to know he plays at 100 mile an hour every time he gets put out on the pitch. And he hadn't had the pre-season he needed, and load kind of got the better of him. But nonetheless, he had a tough outing at Old Trafford, but held his own against De Ligt. And then, he probably got the game that he wanted with a promoted side coming to the Emirates on his day, on his home debut. And he came into his own. What we wanted to see really was us moving the ball quicker. Calafiori pops the ball in the channel. He picks the ball up in a bit where he's licking his lips, beats 3 players and scores near post. We see the mask go on and the crowd go wild. And what a way to open your Arsenal account. And then, Max comes on for his debut, which was fantastic, wins the penalty, had a brilliant cameo performance, Max, that day as well. Not taking anything away from Max Dowman. And we've heard Victor's an excellent penalty taker, and I think free keepers in the net, you wouldn't stop that. Some great performances that day from the team. Convincing home win and another clean sheet. All of a sudden things are looking very bright.
No, very, very bright. We then move on, don't we? Big game, Anfield. Probably felt the most confident going to Anfield in quite a few years. I know we've picked up a couple of draws over there the last few years. Very disappointing afternoon that was at Anfield for me. How did you kind of view it?
Yeah, I mean, that was, if I've got any criticism of Arsenal this year, we've dropped points in 3 games, right? And every time we've done it, I felt we've taken a negative approach at some point in the game, which has cost us, and where I would say that we have invited pressure. And going with the midfield 3 of Marino, all right, we just signed Eze, and maybe he wasn't quite ready to go and start that game. But, the midfield three just really created nothing for the front three. I thought Madueke actually had a really good first half against Kirkez, and was the liveliest of the Arsenal outfield players. But both teams certainly set up with a handbrake on. And, we got more and more defensive and more in our shell as the game went on, and it looked like we went there to get a point. And I just don't, from growing up, from being 9 years old when Arsene Wenger walked in the door at Arsenal, and then watching someone who only coaches a team to win actually never gives any consensus over his 23 years in charge at Arsenal to how the opposition play. Just says if we do what we do, we win, right? To then having a team that sets up in essence to not lose games. I just find it quite hard to stomach, Smuggs. We did fine for 80 minutes, but in the second half, we didn't trouble them at all. And they get a free kick 30 yards out, and maybe Zuboszlai scores that one in 50 like that, but it's a phenomenal free kick. People will say, I know my mate Josh always tells me, Raya could do better, but I've watched that 100 times, that free kick, and listened to people like Joe Hart, great goalkeepers, analyse it. You sometimes just got to doff your cap and just say it was a phenomenal finish, right? And the game was won with a magical moment. But I didn't like that we went there what felt like not to score.
Yeah, it did feel like that, didn't it? It did feel like pretty much that we'd gone there just to basically pick up a set-piece win if we could, but it was just not to lose the game, wasn't it? And at that point, everyone thought, and I've got to be honest, including myself, you've given Liverpool the onus in the title race. Obviously, we didn't foresee the collapse that was going to come from, obviously, Liverpool and Arne Slot's team. But we come out of that international break and we obviously have the Nottingham Forest game, but then there's the Manchester City game, isn't there? In terms of that game, I think we look back at it now, do you know what I mean? Like, at the time, it was like, really, we were looking at 3 points against Man City. Not pretty much the Man City of old as such. Still a little bit of an underbelly there at that point. But it was a big moment, wasn't it, to get that equaliser from Gabriel Martinelli? Yeah,
huge. And again, I felt like we'd gone into that game a little bit with the handbrake on, and this time around it was going to take a moment of magic from us with Martinelli. He had a really tough pre-season. He'd had a really tough end to last season, and many people, probably myself included, were crying out for is his time run at this football club. We look like we are. The most difficult thing about the left wing position at Arsenal is it's constantly compared to the other flank, and even when he's not in his best moments, Saka, he just keeps getting numbers. And it had gone flat on that left-hand side. So, and I think actually ever since that goal, Martinelli has gone on and had a really, really good impact on this season so far. And we lost him at the wrong time as well. A brilliant goal, great touch, lobbed the keeper, take the 1-1. But again, I felt like we set up, they weren't in a great moment, City, and we were in a better moment, and we were the home side. And if we wanted to win the Premier League, we need to win all our home games, and I felt like we could have adapted our game a little bit differently there. But look, there was no blood on the day, and we took a point, and it, may end up being a good point.
No, definitely, I agree with that. I think it definitely will. Hopefully, look at the end of the season, it will be a good point. Get to the end of the month, Newcastle. Been a bit of a tricky bogey ground for us over the last few seasons, is it? Come off some really crappy nights there, if I'm being totally honest, especially in the League Cup semi-final of last year. And we picked up a 1-0 defeat prior to that in the Premier League. But for me, we got the result that I thought we totally deserved on the day with the Gabriel 96th minute winner. But I felt that was the first game that I started to see Gyökeres really come into his own. And I felt this was the point where I think me and you were talking about this, that the guy just needed a goal.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he obviously hadn't. I think there might have been Forest in between the games we've just discussed, where he obviously scored again, which was a great assist from Eze on his home debut as well. We might have missed that one, but
Yeah.
But yeah, what was probably most integral about this Newcastle game is that historically, when we've been going head to head with someone in a title race, it's very difficult to say that you're in a title race come September or October or August. You're right. You know, you really only get into the business end of it kind of end of February onwards. But Liverpool had lost, and it was, you know, could we go to St James's Park and get a reaction? And you know, and the team did, and I felt like, you know, you really saw for the first time there, from the front to the back, there was just a fight amongst them where, you know, they've just got a feeling in their belly, or they've got an anger inside them from coming so close after the last few years, and they're just going to find an extra gear this year. And I think Gyökeres will be intrinsic with that, because he just works so hard. You know, yes, other teams are just going to judge him by his numbers, and because you think he's got a silly celebration, and they'll compare him to Haaland or Isak, or, you know, he played in a farmers league and blah 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 blah, right? But, you know, I think what we've experienced, you and I, and I've tried to kind of hammer this home with you, and we talk offline regularly, is even when he's not scoring, he has just such a monumental impact on the game, the way he shepherds the two centre-halves. And he's created space for Saka that Saka has not had for 3 years. You know, we have experienced the last 2 years Saka having to deal with the double up and the treble up. And I've always said to you, this is where I think Saka is missing Ben White, because at least one then goes with Ben White, because he goes on the overlap and Timber likes to play inverted. So then Saka is almost, you know, and then if he's not got Odegaard, who we lost to injury in the Notts Forest game, then you know, we're crowding out maybe our most you know, our biggest output player. But Gyökeres has been massive for Saka, and whoever's playing on the left wing, because they're getting the opportunity to now go one-on-one with a fullback, because he's taking both the centre halves out of the game. And I think also, I know it's not a massive thing, but, you know, defensively, I felt we missed him against Sunderland. I know you're going to get onto the Sunderland game because you're going through the games, but we missed his aerial presence and his aggression in the defensive box as well, as much as we missed it crowding out the two centre halves in the attacking sense. You know, and I think he's done that brilliantly in every single game he's played. But yeah, Newcastle felt like he had landed, hadn't it? And he kind of had, you know, it looked like it was just a matter of when is he going to score now, because he's doing everything else.
Yeah, no, he definitely was. And I look at the games that obviously after that we got a good 2-0 win at West Ham, which I just thought was a professional performance going into the international break. Then we come out of the international break, and I know you was at the game at Fulham. It's always tricky, isn't it, coming out of the international break? That first game back, me and you have discussed that before. Going to a ground like Fulham, yet again, another bogey ground over the last few years, ticked off the list. Was you happy just to come out there with the 3 points?
Well, I just think you're happy to come out of any away game with 3 points now, because I think people don't put enough credit on. If you go and watch the football live, you know, someone like Marco Silva, he's been at Fulham for a while now. He's completely embedded his style into Fulham. And, you know, you got like Anderson, Bassi, you know, these guys like Diop at the back, right? They're incredibly physical, athletic centre-halves. And, you know, and they're incredibly well managed, and they're really disciplined. And you know, we were in possession of the ball, and where myself and my son were sat, you know, we're just watching Zubimendi pop the ball into Rice, and Rice hitting these crossfield sort of quarterback passes out to the wings. And, you know, we were just trying to unlock them. And they were so disciplined for just 95% of that game. And it just sort of comes down to those moments. And when you've got, you know, such a good asset in your arsenal with the set pieces, you know, then Trossard popped up, and, you know, and we managed to nick the win. They never really looked like scoring, Fulham, but they were trying to stop us from scoring. So yeah, coming back from an international break, getting the win there again, like you said, ticking off a place that we've struggled at historically with maximum points was huge.
Then we look at the Crystal Palace game. Look, that another team that come to the Emirates last year, maybe at the back end of the season, if I'm being frankly honest. And I think if it had been at a different part of the season, I think it could have been a different result. It was probably the worst game I think I've seen at the Emirates for a long, long time, if I'm being frankly honest here. But a win's a win, 1-0. Eze scores against his former club, ticks another 3 points off. Then we go away to Burnley, don't we? And this is where, when your luck's out, your luck's out. Because I watched Gyökeres in that first half, and it was his best game by a country mile. In terms of everything that we've discussed about, in terms of what he was doing, it basically all come to fruition, didn't it, against Burnley in that first half? And my biggest compliment in terms of that first half performance, if he had stayed on that pitch, that game never finishes 2-0.
Yeah, look, I think he probably would have ended up with a hat-trick, or he'd have ended up with a hat-trick of goals and assists. You know, he should have had a hat-trick of goals and assists in the first half, which he played. You know, he put it on the plate for Saka 3 times. And I can't ever think of a moment before where Saka's missed 3 clear-cut chances in 45-minute span, you know. And he showed you everything in his game. You know, he scored. You know, he's doing that fox in the box work. You know, scored again off a Gabriel assist from a corner, in the right place at the right time. He's held the ball up brilliantly against a really physical back line. You know, Tarkowski was all over him. It didn't matter. He enjoyed the fight and the hustle. Popped it off to Saka 3 times. His layoffs were great. His intensity was great. His runs in behind were brilliant. He hustled the back line. You know, we really missed him. I mean, look, I think the biggest credit you can give Gyökeres is the game that was played in the second half was a shadow of what was played in the first half. And whilst Mourinho is an accomplished finisher and he does seem to be incredibly efficient at popping up with a goal, you know, we were a different team against Sunderland. I thought it was just so noticeable in the next game against Sunderland how much we missed Gyökeres from the player that, you know, wasn't there against Burnley, after he just had a brilliant moment against Atletico and scored a brace as well.
Yeah. Obviously, the Burnley game, we win 2-0. Another tick off on the old box. But then we was looking ahead, wasn't we, to the Sunderland game? For some reason, I just had a bit of a I wouldn't say a rotten feeling, but a shady feeling about this game. And losing Gyökeres for me was a big blow. Mikel Merino had done well in the week in terms of his performance at Sparta Prague, but I felt it was a game that we should have seen out, we could have seen out, and I think if we'd been a little bit more adventurous, potentially going into that last 5 minutes and into injury time, I think we could have supported ourselves. I just felt that a little bit that we probably put a little bit too much pressure on ourselves. Whether Mikel was thinking at the time that they'd been away to Burnley a week earlier, then gone to Sparta Prague, maybe he felt they were tiring, but it was obviously 2 points drops in terms of that we were winning the game in the 93rd, 94th minute. Do you think that was a game that we should have seen out?
Yeah, I mean, and this is just highlighting a point I made earlier about when we've gone into a moment of negativity. I think it's cost us points. I think it cost us points against Liverpool. I think maybe the way we set up against City cost us the opportunity to win that game. And then when we went 2-1 up, he goes to the 5 defenders and brings the additional defender on over and above that. You know, and we drop Eze out. We didn't have Gyökeres on the pitch in the start. Merino is not an out ball. You know, we've got nothing really on the pitch that can go and, you know, Thierry was so good at this when we used to lead games. He could carry the ball into the final third or into the corner like 60, 70 yards. And there isn't an Arsenal player in the squad that has the ability to do that. But, you know, we didn't have there was nobody on the pitch, you know, and Rice's legs had kind of almost gone. And he may be the only one that could do it. And we had no out ball. So what we were going to do was go to the Stadium of Light, which is an incredibly tough place to go, with 50,000 Geordies going bonkers, like wooing their team on. And we're inviting them to do the one thing that they're good at, which is load the box with huge amounts of physicality and just see if they can get their elbows out and just create a half chance. And we, you know, when it went to 2-2, you saw that they retreated, and all of a sudden we went on the attack again. And Calafiori had a great chance. Marino had one cleared off the line from Ballard, who had a great game, ex-Arsenal player or academy graduate. And and it just shows that you could have played like this at 2-1, and it's impossible for them to score from their own half. They're not a counter-attacking team. They're not graced with pace. Like, we've still got players in the side who have phenomenal recovery pace. I would much rather deal with a 3-on-3 than deal with a 6-on-6 in the box with all their physicality. I just think, as a fan, from somebody who watches football and has a fairly good understanding of the game, that is abundantly clear and obvious that would be the way to play it. And they didn't. They set up to be contained, defend deep, invite the pressure, and try and see the clock down. And it's gone against us. And I think if we just keep doing that more often than say more often than not, but on enough occasions, it will cost us points, because it's a significant amount of minutes where you've got to then go and battle down the hatches and invite pressure on. And I just wish in those games, not saying go for the third and the jugular, but I'm saying don't stop playing your game. Retain the football, like keep your technical levels and your aptitude high, and and be in a position where if you're in possession of the football, they're not, so the clock's getting run down anyway. So I was disappointed with that from that respect.
I know we mentioned the Champions League, so I'm going to go a bit earlier in the show in terms of obviously your expectations and what we need to get. I'm going to look at the League Cup a little bit quickly, because obviously we've had a quite kind draw so far. Do you know what I mean? We obviously had Port Vale, then we got Brighton at home, which could prove to be a tricky game at the time, especially when you're playing like your second team as such. But looking ahead now, obviously we've got Crystal Palace 2 days before Christmas. If we get over the barrier of Crystal Palace, which I'd expect us to do, if I'm being frankly honest, you start looking at another semi-final final. I feel that it's really important that we get this first trophy on the shelf in February. I know people say, it's only the League Cup, but for me, it's about breeding confidence within the team, building that culture. Do you know what I mean? It was good enough for Pep Guardiola to win it 4 years in a row. How are you quite desperate to see the League Cup come home, or do you feel that actually that we need to just focus on the bread and butter?
No, I think it's essential to be committed and in every single competition. And we're in a quarter final there now. The fixture falls at an unfortunate time, but they're just going to have to find a way of managing it. But this is why we spent £1 billion and built a squad that we've got, because everybody keeps talking about our second team could finish in the top 6, so it should be able to, with a strong amount of rotation, be able to deal with that fixture. It's a home tie, but I think you're absolutely right. I think going to Wembley in February or March, whenever it is, and lifting that will give the players a sense of feeling and sensation of what it's like to win a cup under Arsenal, and it hopefully should kick them on. You just alluded to maybe the greatest Premier League manager of all time. He never turned away the opportunity to win a trophy early in the season and use the momentum to take him to the end. So why should we be any different? It's not a cup we've not won since 1993, I think. So when we won the cup double. So I absolutely, we should be throwing the jugular at it and trying to get that win in.
No, I totally agree with you. And when you go back to the fact that it's 1993 that we last won that trophy, for a club like ours, that's pretty unacceptable, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Our trophy record in recent years is unacceptable for a club of the stature of Arsenal. I think everybody will just come to terms with that. It's absolutely integral now that that we change the tide of this and we start feeling regular final days out and trophies. Now, we haven't been to a final for God knows how many years either, let alone kind of winning things. So it's important now that we we treat every single competition with the same amount of respect. And like I said, there are many players who are on the periphery of this squad who can absolutely contribute in that. You're talking about players like Norgard, Kepa, Lewis Skelly, Havertz, Martinelli, Ora Trossard, Marino, Dauman, coming into a team, if maybe even an Eze if Odegaard's back or whatever, so Calafiori or Hincapi or Mascara, like this isn't like relying on your 16-year-olds in your academy or kind of has-been. These are players in their prime, international regulars. So, we should be more than well equipped to be able to go deep in that competition.
No, definitely. Totally agree with you. I'm going to move on because we are coming to 6:30 already, which is incredible. Feels like we've been talking for hours. But Spurs obviously coming to town Sunday. They're great rivals. Always a big game. Always, as I said earlier on the show, the fixture that we all look for when the fixture list comes out. Not having a pretty bad season themselves, if we're being totally honest. I think Thomas Frank's done a steady job there in terms of obviously picking them up.
Yeah.
I won the one the UEFA Cup last year, but obviously the league form was totally unacceptable, which is obviously what got Ange the sack. Any worries for Sunday?
Look, one thing I would say from 30 years of watching Arsenal is like, North London derbies form is always out the window. It's a cup tie for both teams. Fans are incredibly elevated and emotional, and both teams wants the bragging rights to go back to their retrospective, home of North London. So, it's never an easy game. It doesn't matter who's on in what moment. So the thing I'm probably most concerned about is kind of just tying in, injury news that we've heard today about, Gyökeres is still a doubt. We've just heard that Havertz has had a setback and he maybe will return later part of December now. Yeah. I don't like Van de Ven and Romero going up against Marino, but I feel like if Gyökeres is playing, he's going to be able to occupy them a lot better, and we're going to be able to play our game. It's abundantly clear now with the news from David Ornstein today that Gabriel Magalhaes is going to be out for a period of time. So we're going to he's got 3 or 4 man of the matches against Spurs, so he normally likes to raise his game for that match. So we're going to be counting on our big players, the Rices, the Sakas, to lift and elevate the team for that fixture. And yes, it's very important that we bounce back from the Sunderland result and go and get a result at home.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's obviously a big game. Neither less, do you know what I mean? Like, it is Tottenham, like you said, it becomes a cup tie when you play them, whether it's at home or away. And I think with the Sunderland result, it is vital that we get back to winning ways. Just to obviously keep new Man City obviously at arm's length first and foremost. Now they've obviously got Newcastle Saturday as well. Newcastle haven't been the same team have they this season, but going to Newcastle evening game, it's like us going to Sunderland, isn't it? It's going to be a tough game for Man City, isn't it, against Newcastle?
Yeah, I mean, I would probably say that Newcastle had a fairly similar start to their season to Spurs. Really, it's just been a little bit intermittent. There's been flashes of brilliance in there, and then there's been then there's been some sort of quite bizarre results for them as well. So it's difficult to kind of put your finger on where they're at in their season. Obviously, they've got this whole summer of Willy Won't He around Isak going on, which was probably quite unsettling for the club. But I would actually say that Voltemade has been a brilliant signing for them. I didn't know much about the kid. Obviously they hunted Ekatike down and then Liverpool snatched him. Then they went and snatched Isak, which is all a bit bizarre to me. But I think Voltemade has done brilliantly. There'd almost be an argument, I think, that potentially he'd be signing of the summer from the summer signing so far. Maybe Zubimendi, to be fair. But he's settled into life really well at Newcastle, and he looks a constant threat. Scored a great goal against us. So, they've got the artillery, haven't they, Newcastle? On paper, they've still got a fantastic team. There's lots of talent from front to back there. They've definitely got enough to hurt City, but City do look like they're going through their gears a little bit now. And after watching them against Liverpool, they were, Haaland's kind of dragged them up, and just with how deadly he is in front of goal, when other people were kind of like finding their feet, he's managed to get them their results. And then you look at the players of like Foden and Doku, the last couple of weeks have like really elevated their levels. And even the lad playing at right back, Matthias Nunes, who they signed from Wolves, I thought he was a dead rubber, Smuggs, when at the start of his City career, and even he looks like fairly lively now. And you look at players like John Stones, who can't even get in the team. And I think I said to you when they signed Donnarumma, don't sleep on that signing. He's a we were at the PSG game and he was immense. I think he's a top goalkeeper. So City are going to be there or thereabouts. They're definitely the biggest threat to us this year in the Premier League, I think.
No, I totally agree. I think Manchester City definitely now biggest threat. I think you can never rule Liverpool out, but I think that there's a lot going on within the club at the moment, and they're likely to lose Salah for a period of time because of the AFCON. I think that could come a cropper to them. So I do look at Man City and think, yeah, they will be our big rivals. And I actually look at this weekend could be quite a pivotal weekend, if I'm being totally honest. I know that's quite early on in the season to say, but just say, for example, Man City don't get a win at Newcastle. It gives us a great opportunity to at least get 6 or 7 points in front of them again. Look, we've been there before, so you can never rest on your laurels, can you? Because we see what happened a few years ago when we were 7 points ahead of them. But like we said, totally different squad now. Do you know what I mean? We're not bringing in a Rob Holding for Saliba anymore. We got absolute quality within our ranks to kind of obviously fulfill their moments. And I'd just like to think that with the squad we got this year, that actually, and we're seeing it already, if I'm being frankly on the show, like to sit 4 points clear with the amount of injuries that we've had and we've experienced, and no one really talks about it that much because actually what we brought in has done the job.
Yeah, absolutely. 6 attacking injuries. If you include Odegaard as an attack-minded player, I know he's a midfielder. And some of those players are out for elongated periods of time now. I don't know when we'll see Jesus. I know there's a truckload of media around him at the moment getting back on grass, but he's had no pre-season. He's not played for a year. He had a big injury. He's only back for a month. Got another big injury. Havertz is another one who I think divides opinion amongst the Arsenal fan base. But I think since he signed for us, he's been phenomenal. I think he had so much. His football IQ is so high. I think he will be brilliant for Gyökeres when the two of them actually get an opportunity to play together. I know a lot of people think it's one or the other, but I think he could potentially be Bergkamp to Gyökeres. And he was starting to really come into his own in pre-season as well. I just can't not think about that goal he scored against Athletic Bilbao. It looked like he's gone up another level as an athlete. Where he sort of takes a touch and just dusts both the defenders for pace and takes the goal brilliantly. And I thought, oh God, he's in a really good moment here. And then gets injured at the wrong time. So Odegaard's been in and out. He's never really, let me ask you a question, Smuggs. Since that ankle injury that he sustained for Norway, has Odegaard been the same player? He's really struggled to hold down a long period of time, of being fit. Has he got back to that 2023 level yet, where he was just phenomenal?
No way has he got anywhere near that level, in my opinion. And there's several factors for that. The injuries are obviously a big thing. Like you look at this season, he comes off in them home games. I think, is it 3 home games in a row that he come off injured? Yeah. He's been so unlucky, hasn't he? But when I think back to that 2022-2023 season, the technical player he was and the way he was performing, I don't think we've seen that for a long time. And I always remember, I watched the game back. Do you remember the West Ham Arsenal game when it was 3-3 when West Ham went 3-0 up?
Yeah.
And I remember the 2 best players on the pitch that day. One for West Ham, one for Arsenal. Declan Rice for West Ham, Martin Odegaard for Arsenal. And my dream was always to see these two pair up into centre midfield, do you know what I mean, together. So I'm hoping, like, to be honest, once he gets himself back fit, and look, we don't need to rush him back. We don't need to rush him back whatsoever, but we just need to get him back fit playing football, don't we? And get him back to being that player that he can be, because form, you lose form, don't you? But like temporary, but class is permanent. Do you know what I mean? That he has got that in his game. Do you know what I mean? But he's got to get away from these injuries. He's got to get a break. And like, I think the next few months is going to be absolutely vital in terms of how he brings himself back, how Arsenal embed him back in that team. Because for me, and I know you've been a big advocate of this, like Eze will move over to the left, and I think that will be a game changer.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you took the words out of my mouth. Like, I can't remember how many countless arguments I've had with people on X or whomever it is, you know, or friends in WhatsApp groups about, you know, Eze does all of his best work as you know, the technical term would be an inverted inside forward on the left-hand side, you know, whether it would be occupying the position of a left 10 or it would be a left 11 in that attacking space, because he likes to play with the game in front of him, coming off the left channel into the centre of the pitch. And if you look at where he's occupied space, and you were the first one to kind of mention his performance to me at Fulham, you know, where he would turn a man, get into space, but he's attacking the angle at Fulham, you know, from the right-hand side. So in essence, he's pushing the ball onto his left foot, which is not really where he wants to be. And he had a moment against Sunderland like it, where the ball fell onto his left foot and he crashes it over the bar. He wants to be coming into those moments, onto his right foot. You look at the angle of the way the ball's coming into him when he scores against Crystal Palace. The ball's coming into him on the angle from the left-hand side. He scores a phenomenal kind of almost like karate kick. You look at his goal against Port Vale where he scores. He plays a 1-2 with Miles in off the left flank and scores open side into the right-hand corner. It's just abundantly clear to me where he does his best work. You look at the goal he scored for England this week, in off the left flank, you know, phenomenal finish. And it's just kind of so obvious to me where he is going to be the most explosive. He's going to be in off of that left channel. And I think actually, you know, teams overcrowd Saka. If they give Eze that overlap, which is sort of what they did at England, because they try and contain Kane so much, he will be lethal and he will really affect this league in the second half of it. But I think we need Odegaard back fit in order, you know, to play in that right 10 as a left foot player where he likes to be, and play on the diag to Eze and overload that side. And I think we'd see the best of Eze then. At the moment, he's obviously got to occupy a position on behalf of Odegaard, because, you know, I think maybe it's slightly too early in the season, or the games are coming too thick and fast, and Arteta's trying to ease Ethan into a central role after, you know, playing him mainly in the right wing in Saka's absence last year. So, you know, the best is yet to come for Eberechi Eze.
No, definitely. Right, we are getting to the back end of the show. But what I want to say first is just want to say a massive thank you to two of obviously our sponsors for tonight's show. Obviously, thank you to Ruth Beck's Art, who's obviously supplied us an incredible Thierry Henry picture, obviously of his celebration against Tottenham back in 2002. If you don't remember it, you need to kind of scratch your head and ask yourself why, because it's one of the most iconic moments. So with this first prize that we're going to be obviously handing out, it's around obviously our new segment, which is going to be Ask Jim. So each week, Jim, I'm going to be putting a tweet out at the weekend, probably at the back end of the weekend after the fixtures are played out. And okay. I want people to obviously ask you their questions, and obviously we do a quick round robin in terms of you going through the answers. And at the end, you'll decide who's the best question, and obviously on this show this week that they're going to win this prize.
Okay, sounds good. And thank you again to both the sponsors. So, all right, cool. I'm in the hot seat. Let's go.
All right, you ready? All right, it's Peter Smith. Do you think Arsenal will go back into the transfer market in January? If so, who do you think they will target and why?
Very good question. I think it will be agile in regards to where we're at with the squad, who's fit, who's not. If everybody's coming back, I'm not sure whether or not they'll think they'll need to. If there is a surprise case of somebody wanting to leave, they might want to replace that person. So you're going to have to be fairly agnostic with that. They might look for for one more forward. Potentially, if the rumours are true that Gabriel Jesus does move, and potentially also maybe one other box-to-box midfielder if they're slightly worried about the load. Because you made a really good point about Declan earlier. Norgard can maybe come in and do a job on-off for Zubimendi, but can anyone do Declan's job? I'm not so sure. Very difficult position to recruit for, but. I think, as always, Arsenal are always alert to opportunities. One thing I would say, though, very, very difficult transfer market to go and recruit real talent. If you look over the last 20 years, the players that Arsenal have been able to recruit that have really influenced the team, maybe there's two, maybe three. The only two that come to mind are Arshavin and Aubameyang. So very difficult to recruit in the January window, Peter, but great question.
The next question, B Panda. How does Arteta accommodate Gyökeres, Havertz, Odegaard and Eze in our lineup this season? This is, of course, assuming Rice and Zubimendi both start.
Well, you kind of answered your own question. If you assume that Rice and Zubimendi both start, then you can't probably accommodate all of them because Eze will likely move to the left wing when Odegaard is fit. Odegaard will play in the 10. He's the club captain. He will be picked. And I think then it would be decision based on the opposition as to maybe who would start in the 9 out of Gyökeres and Havertz. I think there is an argument that in some games like Nottingham Forest, for instance, where Declan was rested, where they go with 2 attacking 8s and maybe Havertz and Odegaard both play in the midfield and Eze plays in the front line with Gyökeres and Saka. But yeah, I think if he goes with the double pivot of Rice and Zubimendi, one of those 4 will drop out.
Thank you. Next question. If you could pick any previous Arsenal player and put them into the squad today, who would you pick, where and why? This is from Prudy.
Yeah, I saw this question from Prudy. This is a brilliant question. So Smuggs, I was thinking about this one, right? And the only way to maybe make it interesting by answering it would be by taking out the 2 obvious choices, which would be Bergkamp and Henry, right? The 2 greatest players to ever play for the club. I was trying to, be a bit different and put a reason around it. And if you just go by every ex-player, I think every Arsenal team fits Thierry Henry in it. He's probably the best player to ever play in the Premier League. Dennis Bergkamp is my favourite Arsenal player of all time, but it would be very difficult. I think Thierry Henry was so good he could play in any era. However, if you didn't pick either of those 2, I would pick Alexis Sanchez to play on the left wing. I think he would. Yeah. What we had in that 3 years of Alexis was just monumental, and his output was just phenomenal. And I think he would. I don't know if you agree, Smuggs, but I think he would complement this Arsenal team so well from the left.
Absolute spot on, sir. I was literally thinking all the way along when we were talking when you took them 2 out, Alexis Sanchez all day long.
I heard you say thank you. I wasn't sure if you were cutting me short, if you were agreeing with me.
I totally agree with you, mate. I just think if you put that player in this team, could you imagine?
The Alexis that came to Arsenal and played in that period, really that was the Mesut and Alexis show. There was not a huge amount of talent around them. We were very much in a transitional phase, and those 2 kind of cemented us Champions League football every year, almost won us the title 15-16. Those 2 were a cut above everything else we've had in regards to technical aptitude in the last 2 decades. Mesut would go really close to me as well. You've watched him live. If you ever had the luxury of being able to watch him live, his football IQ, this whole narrative around him being lazy was mental. He used to do 11 kilometers a game. And his football IQ was on another planet, But So I think he would love playing in this Arsenal setup. He left Arsenal just as we brought Thomas Partey in, and I think Thomas Partey was the ideal player to go and play with Mesut Ozil. But Alexis Sanchez in that left position, coming into the infield, he would have just caused havoc in this team.
Brilliant. Well, we have to speed up with some of the questions, so I'm going to knock some of the little ones out quickly. Best goal ever for Arsenal?
Dennis Bergkamp against Newcastle.
How does this Arsenal team compare with the unbeatable team?
Very difficult, like that unbeatable team went invincible and won the league. Man for man, you make an argument there'd be players from both eras in it. But going invincible is something that no one else has done in England in our lifetime and don't really look like doing. So it's very, very, very hard to, defence and goalkeeper, make a massive argument. Midfield becomes a bit trickier. Front line, Henry and Bergkamp, never see anything like that again in Arsenal history. So, split hairs.
Next question was, would this current 2025-26 team win against the invincible side?
No.
Straight to the point.
Yeah, no.
Absolutely love it. Love it.
Because it didn't lose. So,
no.
No,
that's what I want. That's what I want to hear. How did you experience the Anfield title 8-9 win?
Well, unfortunately, I was 3 years old, so I didn't get to experience it live. But it's one of my fondest Arsenal memories from my grandfather, who was the person who sort of implored Arsenal upon me. But, with the beauty of the internet and footage, I've been able to relive it, whether it be reading Fever Pitch as a young boy from Nick Hornby or watching the 89 documentary, which is brilliant. I can't think of how many times I've rewatched that Michael Thomas goal. So, obviously very unfortunate to not be of an age where I could watch a moment like that live. But, anyone that I've known at the Arsenal, probably yourself included, when you speak to people in the pub who are old enough to, the people that used to take me to Arsenal as a young boy, just ask them of their experiences of that game. And, it was just mayhem. All right. Just a sheer piece of brilliance in Arsenal's legacy that I don't think, a moment like that in the final game of a season will ever be toppled.
What's your favourite Arsenal goal versus Spurs, either home or away?
Yeah, I saw this question as well. Watching the goal live watching the goal live, because it happened literally right in front of me. I was sat behind the goal. Was do you remember Aubameyang's goal where he curls it in from outside the post?
Oh, yes, I do.
That goal was brilliant. Do you remember when we went 1-0 up early on in the game and Rosicky scored that thunderbolt? That was a great goal. But, I think for just the complete sheer allure and just how fitting it is with Roof's picture, Thierry's goal when we beat him 3-0 and won the league was just monumental, an individual piece of brilliance, and rightly sits as a statue outside Emirates Stadium for us to remember each time we grace the great Emirates. What's
your favourite North London derby memory?
Probably Thierry's goal. Well, North London derby, be winning the league at the Lane. There's no better feeling.
Yeah. Last question. What would be your best starting 11 based on this season's squad?
Good that you left this one till last. I sort of split hairs with this, didn't I? So Raya. I mean, does it have to be just based on their performances this year, or just as Arsenal?
What would you want your 11 to be if everyone was fit?
If everyone's fit and purring, it would be Raya. I know this will shock a few people, but it would be Ben White at right back. I mean, again, that 23 season, 24 season, even that he played under injections for a whole year when Timber was injured. It's just, I love everything about Ben White. He might be the last of what we would call like the old age, like a proper shithouse of a footballer, like where he used to fuck around with goalkeepers' gloves and he stood up for every single player. Everyone says how physical he is and how much he just loves the competition. I love everything about how close to the old school he is. And I think I think he gets the best out of Bukayo Saka, Ben White. So as much as I love Jurriën Timber, and it's like you could toss a coin, if I had to pick the team, I'd pick Ben White. Saliba, Gabriel pick themselves. I've been really, really impressed, and you've put this upon me. I've been really impressed with Calafiori this year. I think it's really difficult to not pick him.
Yeah.
But if I could see a bit more of him, I think Hincapi might be Calafiori, but with monumental levels of pace. So I'm definitely kind of got him as I'm watching him. Apparently Smuggs Hincapi is already the fastest player at Arsenal. Kilometers per hour tracked. He's the quickest player on the gun at Arsenal.
Incredible.
Yeah, quicker, like a couple of kilometers an hour quicker than Martinelli, by the way. Yeah. I think the midfield would be Zubimendi, Rice, and Havertz. Yeah. Havertz in the 10, and Saka, Gyökeres, and Eze.
Yeah, that's interesting, especially the Havertz one in centre mid. I think like I'm pretty much like you in some ways. I think there's a big role for Havertz in there, and I'm really intrigued in terms of his return, and gutted that he's not going to return, but obviously that will happen at some point. But I think Havertz is going to have a big impact into the second half of the season. So, yeah.
Let me just ask you one, Smuggs. If it was day one of the season, and I'll ask you a question. I don't want you to feel left out. It's day one of the season. You're the gaffer. The only thing that's not been done is for you to name your skipper. Who are you naming as your skipper and why?
Declan Rice. Declan Rice all day long. Just think that he breeds everything that you want in a captain and a skipper. I see what he did at West Ham. I just always go back to, I went to the Youth Cup final a couple of years ago when Arsenal got hammered in the final by West Ham. Who was in the changing room celebrating with the West Ham youth? Declan Rice. I just think that he's everything that I would want in a captain. And for me, I understand why he's not the captain, and I think that's a big decision. And I get the pros and cons in terms of that. But for me, Declan Rice would be my captain all day long.
Yeah, I mean, it's a toss-up for me between Gabriel and Declan Rice. So, look, these modern-day football, they have these leadership groups, don't they? One person wears the armband, but apparently it's split amongst 3, 4, 5 guys or whatever, which I'm not completely sure if I like that. I think if you go back and look at us in our best moments with either Tony Adams or Patrick Vieira, it was abundantly clear we had one leader on the pitch, and they led by example. But yeah, Roy Keane at Man United, Vincent Kompany at Man City, John Terry at Chelsea. These teams that go on and win major honours continuously seem to have one notable leader. But yeah, I like Odegaard as a player. I think he's a great player, but I just wonder whether or not he might just re-find his form if he just concentrates on the football and not everything else that comes with the captaincy. But mate, what a first show. Thank you very much for all the work that you've done, making it happen, putting everything together, working with Alan for the phenomenal intro music, being so good at getting the sponsors. I can't thank you enough for the opportunity and the platform. I'm very excited to see our season sort of unfold together. Hopefully it's one of success.
No, yeah, definitely. Obviously, thank you as well, mate. Absolute great David show. But we're not just done right yet. Firstly, we need your winner for the questions for the Ruth Beck's art, and then we need to just quickly do the clock win, and then we're done for our first ever show.
Okay, so I think it was Prudy who asked the question, which the answer was Alexis Sanchez. Which previous player would get into this current Arsenal team and why? I thought that was a really, really cool question. So I'm going to go with that one.
Well done, Prudy. I will obviously give you a message and we'll get Ruth Beck to send you that incredible picture over. We have got one more. Obviously, I'm going to share screen, and this is where the piece where I'll get put under a bit of pressure. So we're going to do the clock, the famous Emirates clock that I created with Martin, which was obviously part of our start off around the N5 show. So we're going to do a clock. This is everyone who reposted the tweet out the other day. So good luck to everyone, and obviously the winner will win the clock that obviously Martin superbly crafted.
Good luck, everybody.
So here we go.
You've got John Cross on there. Is that the John Cross?
Oh,
starting narrative. Exiting narrative.
Oh, it's Giovanni. So Giovanni has won the clock. Absolutely incredible. Actually, two people that come on to my other show have actually won today. So well done to you both. We love giving out prizes. So yeah, well done, Prudy. Well done, Giovanni. Absolute excellent. I'll get in contact with you both, and we'll get your superb gift sent over to you. Obviously, lastly, Jim. Obviously, first show done. How'd you find it, mate?
Yeah, mate, loved it. Yeah, really good fun. It's obviously quite late out here, but we were just about on time, and we said an hour and 15. I think we've gone an hour, so I think we've done quite well there. So really, really good fun, mate. Looking forward to the next one.
No, we definitely have done really well, and obviously, thank you very much for all the engagement in the chat. Look, we're not utilising this as such yet as we're going to pick up everything in the chat. We will try and implement some stuff into the show as we go through a few more editions in terms of what we can do with the chat criteria. But obviously, thank you very much, guys, for coming in and listening. An incredible, nearly 300 people joined us today in terms of our first show. So I think that's an absolute incredible effort. To everyone who's been involved in the show today, but also to obviously myself and Jim.
Yes, absolutely. Pat yourself on the back, Smuggs. All right.
Yeah. Doing it now, mate. I'm doing it now. Anyway, guys, obviously, thank you very much. We will be back next week, 5:30, to discuss obviously the North London derby and look ahead to the big Champions League game against Bayern Munich. Come on, you Arsenal.